Hi there and welcome to our home-based experiment. So in this experiment, we will investigate the percentage composition of copper sulfate pentahydrate. Shown here are the materials that you need for this experiment. You need your copper sulfate pentahydrate, your digital balance, your test tube, some small glasswares as container, your butane torch, pen, test tube holder, and our data sheet. So copper sulfate is a known irritant, so make sure to use mask when you're doing this experiment. And also, be careful in using the butane torch because unattended use of this butane torch may lead to fire. Let us now begin our experiment. So the first thing that we should do is to measure the mass of our empty test tube. So grab your digital balance, turn it on, and I will be using this small container. Pair it so to make it 0, and then grab your big test tube. So the mass of our test tube is 17.550 grams, and then record that in your data sheet. Now the next step is to get sample of our copper sulfate pentahydrate. So I will just get a little amount of the copper sulfate pentahydrate and dispense it here in this paper. So copper sulfate pentahydrate is color blue in blue crystals. So we don't know yet the mass of the copper sulfate sample that we got here. So we will put this in the test tube. Okay. So the mass now of our test tube is 19.684. So that's the mass of our empty test tube with the sample. And then record it in our data sheet. Let us now compute the mass of the sample of copper sulfate pentahydrate. So the mass of the test tube, the empty test tube with the sample is 19.685. Then we will subtract the mass of the empty test tube, which is 17.550. So that means our sample is 2.135 grams, and that is the mass of our sample before heating. Now, we will heat the sample under our torch, butane torch. Let us now heat the copper sulfate pentahydrate sample. So you grab your butane torch and then use your test tube holder, and then the proper technique is to sway your test tube dun sa flame. So make some observations. So nakikita ko na dito na nag-turn white na yung ating copper sulfate pentahydrate sample. So you do this until the color completely changes from blue to white. So nakikita nyo dun sa test tube, meron parang usok, so that's water being released. Meron pa rin. So you will do this until mag-change yung color niya completely. So it's getting hot now. So I think this is it na. Puti na yung nasa loob niya. So we will stop now the heating. So now let's set aside this test tube and allow it to cool down. Yan. So ngayon malamig na yung ating test tube. It's now cool to touch. And this is the time na i-measure na natin yung ating test tube with the sample. Okay? So again, grab your digital balance. So ito, ang mame-measure kasi natin ay yung mass ng test tube with the sample after it's being heated. So yung mass na dito is 18.899 grams. So paano natin malalaman yung mass ng sample na lang? So alam natin kanina yung mass ng ating test tube which is 17.550. So we will deduct that value from itong 18.899 natin. So that will give us 18.899 minus 17.550. So that gives us 1.349. So ito na lang yung mass of the copper sulfate. This now is anhydrous na siya. So wala na siyang water. So the sample is 1.349. Ngayon, meron tayong isang data sheet dito. Kailangan i-fill out yung the mass of the water that is released. So, alam na natin yung mass ng sample inside, and then alam natin yung mass ng sample before heating kanina. So, the mass of the sample before heating is 2.134, and now it's 1.349. So, ma-account natin kung ilang grams yung nawala na water. So, what we'll do is subtract that value. So, 2.134 minus 1.349, and that will give us 0.785. So the mass of the water released dito sa ating ginawang experiment ay 0.785 grams. And then, ang sunod na step na natin ito ay mga post-calculation na lang. So now this is the part na gagawin na natin yung mga post-experiment calculations natin. So, ano ba yung mga nakuha natin na value? So, we have the mass of the sample before heating, that's 2.134 grams. The mass of the sample after heating is just 1.349. And we accounted the water release, 0.785. So, this is the time na kailangan nating kunin yung mga percent composition. So, for example, for copper sulfate, pentahydrate, we will get the percent water and the percent copper sulfate lang. Okay? So, let's do this. So for the percent copper sulfate, you do this like this. So percent copper sulfate is equal to yung ano siya after heating and before heating. So that's 1.349 grams all over the 2.134 grams times 100. So grab your calculator. So that will give us the value . So the value is 63.21%. So how about the water? Kung gusto mo magmadali, gawin mo na lang is i-subtract mo yung value na to with 100. So the percent water is 100 minus the 63.21. And that will give you 36.79%. So kung gusto nyo naman talagang i-verify kung ito talaga yung sagot, ay you divide this value, the 0.785 grams all over the mass of the sample before heating, and that is 2.134 grams times 100. So, i-compute lang din natin. So, that is 0.785 all over 2.134 times 100. So, that gives us the exact value, 36.79. So, ayan. Okay siya. Tama. Okay. So, ngayon, ito pa lang yung mga experimental values natin. Kailangan natin kasi i-compare ito dun sa ating theoretical value. So, kukunin natin naman yung sa copper sulfate naman. Ngayon, ang gawin natin dito ay yung sa copper sulfate naman. So, kunin natin yung molar mass ng copper sulfate pentahydrate. So, CuSO4 with 5 water. So, ang copper kasi ay 63.55. According to our, so that's 63.55. Plus, ang sulfur ay 32.07. And then, we have 4 na oxygen. So, 4 times 16. So, yung copper sulfate pa lang is 159.62 grams. Pero, i-add pa rin natin yung 5 na water. So, ang 5 water, paano natin siya i-compute? Ang H kasi ay 1.008. So, 1.008 times 2 plus the 16. So, ang isang water molecule pa lang ay 18.016. Pero dapat ay 5. So, multiply natin siya by 5. So, that gives us 90.08 grams. So, ngayon i-add natin sila parehas. So, 159.62 plus the 90.08. So, this will give us 249.7. So, that this 249.7, that's the mass of the copper sulfate pentahydrate. So, maganda na pinaghiwalay natin siya kasi gagawin natin yung parang ganito kanina. Dun sa percent ng copper lang and percent ng water. So, paano natin makukuha yung percent ng copper sulfate? So, ito ay equal lang sa dun sa 159.62. Kasi yun ang mass ng component na yon all over the 249.7, which is the molar mass of the copper sulfate na pentahydrate. So, that's 249.7 grams times 100%. Yan. So, ano lang natin? So, 159.62 all over the 249.7 times 100. So, this gives us 63.92%. Okay? So, that's for the copper sulfate. Paano naman yung sa water? So, ang gawin na lang natin ay isubtract natin ito from 100. So, 100 minus that. This gives us 36.08%. Medyo magkalapit naman yung ating values. So, experimentally, so that's 63.21 for the percent copper sulfate and then 36.79 for the water. Compare nyo siya dito sa ating mga theoretical values. The percent copper sulfate theoretical is 63.92 and then percent water is 36.08. So, maliit lang yung difference ng ating experimental and theoretical value. So, kung gusto nyo, pwede rin naman natin i-compute yung error na na-compute natin. So, now let's continue our calculation. This time, we'll compute for the percent error. So, earlier kasi ay na-generate na natin itong mga values na to. These are your copper sulfate, percent and percent water for theoretical and experimental. So, how do we compute for the percent error? So, that's the absolute value of the theoretical minus the experimental all over the theoretical times 100. Okay? So, kahit yung percent copper sulfate lang yung kuna natin ng percent error. Okay? So, that will give us theoretical is 63.92% minus the 63.21% all over the theoretical, which is 63.92% times 100%. So, ano yung percent error natin? You grab your calculator. So, that will give us 63.92 minus 63.21 all over 63.92 times 100%. So, ang nakomit natin na percent error ay 1.1% lamang. So, that is our calculation for the percent error. Napakaliit lang ng ating nakomit na error. Thank you.